Hey everyone, I'm back. Welcome back to my channel. I'm finally down to one job at the moment, so I have a little more time to record and go see movies. And there's a few that I need to go back and watch and then make reviews for, but I wanted to start with the new movie, Kraven the Hunter. If you end up enjoying this video, please consider liking and subscribing. That way maybe one day I can get mauled by a lion. That way maybe one day I can become one of the best hunters of all time. The synopsis is as follows. Kraven's complex relationship with his ruthless father starts him down a path of vengeance, motivating him to become not only the greatest hunter in the world, but also one of its most feared. So without further ado, let's get into the 6 things that make a movie great. 1. The plot. This movie opens with Kraven as an adult, hunting down some big mob boss, doing all sorts of fantastical feats, so that we know he is in fact Kraven the Hunter. Then it flashes back for about 20 to 30 minutes and shows the origin story of Kraven. We then flash forward again and see Kraven as an adult. He reconnects with an acquaintance from his childhood, and they basically team up to start trying to take down these big names, all while he has the underlying tension of a difficult relationship with his father. And I gotta say, this movie started off okay. I think the strongest part of the story was when they went back and showed the origin of Kraven and his relationship with his brother and his father, but then it just went nowhere for the next 3/4 of the movie. And when you arrive at the end of the film, you're completely underwhelmed with this character, and it's just messy and awful. So for me, plot gets a thumbs down. 2 is family friendliness. Kraven the Hunter is rated R. There's a mild bit of profanity, but there's a moderate bit of blood and gore and action and violence that's definitely not suited for a younger audience. Believe it or not, that is actually part of this movie that I did like, because I do think that these anti-hero movies should have been all rated R, but Kraven is a perfect example of how an R rating wouldn't have saved those movies, because you actually need good writing to make that happen. All that to say, family friendliness gets a thumbs down. 3 is acting and script. Admittedly, one of the only reasons why I wanted to watch this movie is because of Aaron Taylor Johnson and Russell Crowe, and their performances were the best by far. And that's not saying much, because the writing of this movie was so bad that they only did what they could with it, but it wasn't anything amazing. Then you talk about the really bad performances here. Ariana DeBose gives one of the most flat performances I've seen an actress give this year. Unpopular opinion, I don't like Fred Hetchinger as an actor, and so I was annoyed with his performance. And Alessandro Nivola and Christopher Abbott played about the most Looney Tune-like villains I've seen so far, besides the one from Madam Web, and their acting performances were horrendous. Like, any hope that this movie had of being taken seriously was completely wiped away by those terrible performances, because they were super cheesy. And the script was absolutely terrible. Like I mentioned, it felt like this movie was pieced together in a bunch of different ways, and so a lot of the things that we would see happen did not make sense, because it felt like the movie was implying to the audience that these things had happened before, but we had never seen those things happen before, so they brought them up as if they were an established part of what the film had already shown, but it hadn't shown it. And so the movie very quickly shifted from something that could have been darker and serious to very cartoonish and awful, and it felt like it was splitting this movie in half. So for me, acting and script get a thumbs down. 4 is character development. Despite this movie doing a flashback to try to show the character development of Kraven, really the only character development that this movie has is in that flashback where it shows Kraven and his brother growing up with their father. But what I didn't like is that after an incident that causes Kraven to get his abilities, it just flashes forward and then Kraven is who he is. So it completely missed any character development between his thought process when he was a kid and his thought process as he is Kraven now. And that is pretty crucial, because he's a very different person. But after the first quarter of this movie, there is no character development at all. It seemed like they would force characters together like Kraven and Calypso because they needed to be on a team together, but there was no development, there was no on-screen chemistry, it was just all forced. Calypso is as shallow as a kiddie pool. She doesn't get any character development and becomes laughable by the end of the film. And with there being multiple antagonists that are all bad, it just completely distracts from everything else. Russell Crowe is the best antagonist in this film, and he is the most underutilized and not paid attention to in the film, which is a huge bummer because there was a lot of potential there. Character development gets a thumbs down. 5 is visuals and CGI. This movie tries to hide a lot of its bad CGI under cover of darkness. There are a handful of moments that are decent and you're able to suspend disbelief willingly, but there are a couple moments where you're like, okay, that's pushing it. The action sequences to me were mildly entertaining and they were one of the better parts of the movie, but it wasn't even close to being enough to save it. So visuals and CGI get a 50-50. And 6 is rewatchability. Kraven the Hunter clocks in at 2 hours and 7 minutes long. And despite there being mild promise during the first quarter of the film, the next 3 quarters of the film is just horrible. If this truly is the end of the Sony anti-heroverse, it's quite fitting. I feel like everyone collectively would be huge fans of these films if they were written better, because we all want to see these things come to life, but we want to see it done right. But it seems that Sony is not capable of doing that. That being said, I will never watch this movie again. So for me, rewatchability gets a thumbs down. With all these errors considered, I have to give Kraven the Hunter a 2 out of 10. This movie had an okay start, and performances from the likes of Aaron Taylor Johnson and Russell Crowe did as much as they could to save this film, paired with a couple okay action sequences. But other than that, this movie was chock full of absolutely cheesy, terrible acting performances, a horribly written script, a fragmented plot and storytelling points, bad CGI, horribly written Looney Tune-like villains, all that collectively amounted to another bad film. Especially looking at the past 2 years, there have just been so many bad movies this year. Hopefully there's a resurgence, there's a couple more movies I'm excited to watch this year, but with all that in mind, I would absolutely not waste your time or money going to see Kraven the Hunter in theaters. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen Kraven the Hunter, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.